So Thursday, July 6th, Food on Ontology Curation Group. And we've got a little agenda here, and we'll start it off with the Food X2 mapping question. And I had an email on the subject matter, so I'm just going to bring that up and share it. Okay. I will share my screen. Okay. So I guess I'll start by saying for the USDA mapping project from Food On to USDA, we've gravitated to thinking in terms of SCOS close match or exact match as the annotations to point from our entities to their entities. And in the case of the SR legacy database of samples that they tested for nutritional content, they're like over 7,000. And those being particular samples, they often have other things baked into them in the label. And Food On is usually offering up a class that's a little bit broader than. So what we gravitated towards is that if the match is happening from Food On to or it's easier to think of the mapping from and I wish Anusha was here to just double check for me, but it's okay to use close match if like we're talking about raw broccoli in Food On and raw broccoli over on the USDA side. As soon as they start talking about like cooked broccoli and we don't have a class for that, we just have broccoli, then we would be saying that that's our term has a narrower match over to the USDA one. Usually, or the USDA one has a broad match to ours. That's probably the easiest way of thinking of it. Thing is, we want to have the mappings from Food On easily visual over to USDA samples. So maybe trying to offer the narrower or close match. We're almost never offering the exact match, just because for the ontology people, that's supposed to be a logical equivalence. Like you can swap one term for the other and not have sacrifice anything in the OWL or in the knowledge graph.
And just a question, do you think it's possible to have an exact match, or is it too restrictive, too difficult?
Exact match really only makes sense according to people I've heard, and they're involved in this SSSOM project, which is Obo Foundry's way of offering mappings from an entity, a class, to either a synonym free text or to another vocabulary term or to another ontology term. And so so they're willing to say exact match occurs between, say, two ontologies that have patient, human patient, and they're defined exactly the same in both ontologies, but they have different IDs. And there are no logical bad consequences of having the two ontologies married by that term. So that's an exact match. Anything else is either close, broad, or narrow. Now, you were about to use SCOS notes, you're saying, or something?
It is just a way to integrate, to include the FoodX2 codes, because I don't know, it is not a label so far. These codes are just associated with the label, but they are in FoodX2, they are included in the label, but in my ontology, I don't want to have these codes in the label, so I have to put them in another place. Right. So we are thinking about where to place these codes, and we have think about SCOS related, but I don't think it is a good idea. I don't know, or SCOS note or SCOS hidden label. I don't know, because we have to use one of the SCOS standard, one of the SCOS concepts to have them included. Yeah.
So so the big trend in Obo Foundry anyway is to start using this SSSOM.
Yes, that's fine, but that's for matching for close exact match, or
but it's not,
because you have in Obo you have the cross database reference, but we don't have this in SCOS.
So this is what's happening in Obo. We're moving away from DBXREF, database cross-reference. We're moving towards the SCOS, use of the SCOS terms.
Oh, okay.
But we're using it within the context of this SSSOM platform. And they have a one-pager on how to do mappings. But the key point is this SCOS, close match, etc., doesn't have to point to two ontology terms at either end. It can point to codes like the EFSA codes.
Okay.
So I think you can go stronger than just SCOS note.
Okay.
You can go to SCOS close match, or depending, unless you've changed the meaning of the term in your end of things, then maybe you have to look at some of the other. I'll try to dig up.
I have not changed the meaning, but I have changed some labels.
Right. So label.
But it is the same for me, but the same concept. But
okay, well then probably SCOS close match would work. I'm just going to quickly look up SSSOM page. There was a page that somebody just directed me.
Yes. And just a question, how do you manage by your side the different cross DB codes you have included in your in Foodon, because you have already ones?
I know. We're going to be moving those out slowly to this SSSOM table. The nice thing about this SSOM, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but in luck, Kai, I think maybe you've worked with this a little bit more than I have, but it's just a TSV file that you can curate over time, and each line is a mapping from our ontology term to the world. And then we can read that file in and create in our OWL ontology the appropriate annotations for that. I'm going to share my whole screen.
You mean we have to go in two steps? First, we have to include that as close match, and then you can refine this when you have the axiomatization? No? It is not the idea you...
Okay. Here, I'll share the whole screen. Okay. So, right. You've got choices. You could just be doing this SCOS close match or exact or notes directly in process in transform on. That's fine. The maintenance vision that we had is that we could have our ontology file, and then we could have all these other mappings to other things. Like you could have a mapping to Foodon, or Foodon could have a mapping to you, as well as to FoodX2, as well as SR Legacy. We could have all of that, those mappings managed in a separate file, and then read that content and have it show up directly in the ontology. That's one choice. The other is to use SCOS exact match and close match and so on directly in your ontology, and to extract somehow the SSOM file and call it a separate product if people want it. I'm thinking of having a core Foodon without any of the mappings, and then having a separate mapping file, and then having a published version of Foodon that has the mappings as well, which of course swells the size of Foodon like ×3 or something. So that way, if you, for those who want, they can get version of Foodon or your ontology without any external mappings, having them already stripped away because they're not needing them on the one hand.
The triple SOM mappings are really meant to be kind of an external resource that anyone can use. That's like, I'm just a mapping between these two resources.
Exactly. So, so it becomes knowledge in itself that's separate from your ontology. And I'll just put into the chat the this page, which seems to do a good job of explaining.
But just to be sure, this means if we are using a close match or exact match to refer to FoodX2 codes, it means that FoodX2 codes become concepts themselves. They will have their own URI, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, no. So SSOM and SCOS exact. Okay. Well, your point is that SCOS has this framework of that both ends of the predicate have to be concepts.
The point is that usually it doesn't necessarily always need to be like this, and we can double check with Nico, but the point is usually it's an IRI mapping thing between two vocabularies. It might not be that one of them has to resolve. A code might work. I'm not sure. We'd have to double check that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. It would be nice to know.
Right. So that kind of brings us to whether these the second point, which is whether the EFSA FoodX2 codes are resolvable URIs. And
yes, that's another point, and from our side, we have to work on the resolvable URI.
Yeah,
you have still to work on, but next week we have a meeting with my IT colleague to do that, to think about this at least, because we have some work to do with respect to your comments. I don't know if I have understood all the points.
Yeah.
With my my URI so far, they are not finished because we have just I don't know how would you say, the negotiation, the content negotiation is not in place so far, but we have we are working on this.
Okay. Good. Well, I don't.
That's what you mean with resolvable link, resolvable URI.
Yeah.
It means it has to be, yes.
So let's circle back to that issue. Or
in order to make the mapping work in a TSV file, the IRI doesn't have to resolve.
Yes, that was my my thing, but yes, we have anyway. We have to work on the resolvable URI. But you are right. I think it is not necessary to have the CSV mapping in place. Yes.
It isn't necessary, but I will address your question, Magali, about the URIs that you guys have going in Transformon in just a sec. Kai might have
thank you.
technical input on that too.
Very interested to have your your advice.
Sure. There's something else going on, Kai, with the Transformon URIs. Okay, so I was first going to point out how a database that may not have resolvable codes can still be handled and as an external resource. So Siren is kind of a good one to use.
Good point.
Know that one, right? You should know this one because Patrice entered.
Yes, of course. That's nice because we have the question. I don't know how you managed
right.
This, so you will explain. It will be nice.
Right. So here's an example of a local unique identifier handled by bioregistry.io registry for Siren. So if a resource doesn't already have a resolvable location out on the web, then this bioregistry is a great place to create one sort of for it. So This is what Patrice Boucher has done for
I
the
should ask Patrice.
right.
Sorry,
So
I have not asked him.
yeah, so here's an example of a resolvable URI, and Foodon is now using these. So F11903, unable to resolve entries in Siren. So this is as far as bioregistry can go, but what they're offering you is the textual document to the table right here. So I can actually click on this and get the Siren table and look up the code. This is just an example of how you can take an old resource that doesn't really show up on the web, but actually make it resolve. So they picked the very first entry as the example of how to look up information on
By
that.
the way, all of those things look like they're SR terms.
Okay. Yes, right.
Just from a quick glance.
Yes.
That's what it looks like to me.
That's right. And it's quite possible these Langual codes are actually showing up in SR Legacy when you look up that. And so this actually is what Foodon based its food product database on 7 years ago. And we've been trying to dig ourselves out of the hole ever since. Anyway. So that's what Patrice set up just to handle Siren, even though there is no database out there for Siren. Now, FoodX2 is a little bit different. It's in bioregistry 2, and its codes aren't resolvable. But actually, I'm wrong about that. So let's see, where's the search form here? There it is. Okay. So here's bioregistry's entry for FoodX2 resource. And I forget who entered it. They don't actually show. But they actually have two providers for looking up these things. One is bioregistry itself, and you're not going to get any further than oh, I see. Bioregistry is actually redirecting to the UK food standards industry for this code entry. But this is what they're redirecting to. And so an example here for this particular item is pointing more directly to it. So let's say FoodX2 finally gets EFSA finally gets online resolvable URIs to their codes. Well, that can be added here as a resource, and you either still get to use the bioregistry reference to get to it, or you can start using a more direct URI. But either way, we've sort of solved the problem of getting more information about these particular codes. So I'm proposing that Foodon use this URI for each reference to a FoodX2 code. And that, Magali, if you wanted to have these resolve to dedicated pages, of which at the moment it's only this British one that's offering it, but if FoodX2 finally gets into the business, then they will have a URL. But you could also use this same URI to actually get to a page that has things as more or less as FoodX2 references them.
But just, I don't know why you have to display an HTML page for the mapping. That's my point of misunderstood.
Okay.
misunderstanding. I don't know.
I think this
Just it is two different things, but yes, we can use this to redirect.
Okay. I'm just saying, if a foodx2 code shows up in foodon, or if it shows up in transformon, how do we provide an easy way for people to find out more about that code? They're either going to some spreadsheet in that EFSA has that you can download somewhere, or we're giving them a URI that points to.
There do exist an Excel spreadsheet provided by the EFSA at each release.
Right.
But you have to download it. You have, it is not easy to find it. Yes,
exactly.
I agree.
So why not adopt this URI resolvable thing? Maybe not directly to data food gov, because as you said,
but to bioregistry, yes.
We
and
don't
what
know
about
if they're supporting this. And I asked them by email whether they're supporting this still, and I haven't got an answer back. But it's safe for them to use the bioregistry IO reference.
Okay.
The other thing, Damien, is that that's one line. The way that a triple SOM works is you typically have one line that gives the IRI prefix. And so inside of the triple SOM mapping file, it would just be A0, whatever that code was, mapped against foodon, whatever. And so it would be like one line change to change basically the prefix. So it would be something that's really easy to fix. So basically it's not too big of a problem. It'd be nice to have ones that actually resolve so you can look at it as you make the mapping. That really helps.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Just looking at where is. Oh, I had the page up for the SSOM stuff just a moment ago, and it was going to show some examples of that one line mapping. So I think it's important to do that right now. So I'll scrounge for it, which moves things out of the way here and there. Okay, I guess I have to just type it in again. SSOM. And this is the more particular page, but today I have an example. All right, so these are the choices of the mapping vocabulary, but the example of it, just to visually have a visual. Looking for a table here. All of this stuff.
I'll try to find one too, Dave.
All this stuff before the actual showing of the table makes it look much more complicated, which foils my attempt to sort of explain it by looking at a table here. Okay, I think we're getting warm. We're getting close. Pages and pages and pages of text, the relationships, and oh my God.
Yes.
Here we go. Subject, predicate, object mapping. Here we go. This is an actual example of the mapping. And so it's one code, the relationship, and then the object ID is the target, which can also be a piece of text or a code, or a prefix like foodx2:, and then there's some mapping justification, and then you can actually have the free text, I mean the English or French or whatever labels for the terms that you've just mapped. So that's what you're ending up with, this one table for all of the resource mappings, which can have thousands of lines in it. Okay, that's all I wanted to point out there.
Yeah, there was another example that was resolving more prettily on GitHub.
Okay. You just pop the URL in there.
Yeah, just put it in the chat. Yeah.
Right. Okay, right. Right, so here's the match, and then we often want to know whether it's computer generated or manual. Good. All right, so to your, I think maybe the remaining question. So maybe Magali, if you could show your team some of this stuff in terms of the FoodX2 mapping that they might understand. At least the exact match could work, or close match, sorry, or whichever kind of match.
Like here with the units, it's going to be exact matches because we actually know it's the same thing. But with foods, it might be a little more ambiguous.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, so the other thing about transform on is that it's broken the classes into this kind of URL that has a bit of a prefix to it. So it's let's see, are these the ones?
But we have some error in the parsing, so we have to fix this. Perhaps I think this whole list of open data .inray. There was something to check when I have imported the file, I think. I don't know if it is correct to have all this list of HTTP.
Oh, that's okay.
That's okay. Okay.
Some of these ontologies, they don't actually have a label. They may not have a label separate from the URI, or if you imported it, you didn't add the label. But it's easy to actually just add RDFS label.
Label. Okay.
Oh, well, here it is.
Hey, there. Here, yes.
So maybe what's going on is that there are 3 labels here, and it's screwing up. AgriPortal might be screwing up simply because there are 3 labels.
Okay.
It's not able to distinguish.
Yes, okay. I have to fix this with my colleague.
Okay, that might be it. I mean, that's valid to have a label in different languages. So this might actually be AgriPortal's problem, that it's not choosing a particular one. It's just a guess. I'll go to this record. Yeah. Okay, well, anyway, I'll leave that to you. But
you can click on one that doesn't have that problem, like click on material or something.
Yeah. So this is
oh no, it's from Sosa, that's why.
Yes, right. Because we have imported. We have just changed some label, but in fact, it is a Sosa concept.
Right. So just to say, I don't know, Kai, if there's any red flag at all, but Transform On isn't trying to be Oboe Foundry compatible. So the
URLs, no, that's totally fine.
Yeah. So the URLs look like this for terms.
Yes, for sure. Yes.
So they have a little bit of a hierarchy indicated in the URI pointing to a term. So
yes, that's it.
This process thing here. So is it going to be okay to have a namespace that points just to Transform On in general, and then have the ontology term ID actually include this process slash and then forward space that? I guess that's fine. I mean, I guess there aren't any web tools that would screw up with that. Often it's like,
why is it a problem to have the?
Well, I'm not saying that it is. I'm just probably nervous when I shouldn't be. But I was just wondering if any tools might mess up. looking for an ID and finding a / in it, but I guess that's legal.
You'd have to look at what the like Q name or NC name protocols are. Someone like James would know.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, something like this. The NC name or Q name, I think, are the XML kind of related standards which affect what we're doing. So like in the regular expression, yeah,
Right,
it cannot contain those characters. So like the slash is part of that.
right.
Yes, it is not correct to have a slash at the end of the URL. That's what you are meaning? I don't know.
Yeah, but this is
Well,
actually
it's just that
anywhere within it.
it would expect, so it would expect the URL / everything .. / process. It would expect that that's in the prefix, and then the thing after the last slash is the name.
Yes, but that's it. In my URI, we have the last part, which is anonymous process. The domain goes after the concept, the concept is just after process. It's after the last slash, and it is anonymous because we have not taken the label in the name of the URI.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
This is fine. This part's fine.
Yes, I think so, because it was ambiguous
let me finish. Let me finish.
Then we were confused, so we have changed everything.
Okay. So there may be a problem though if you're trying to provide one URL namespace for transform on. If you were to do that and then have an ID directly after transform on pointing straight to this, that would be okay for the ID. But you've got this process / and then
I don't know why. I have to ask why.
Okay.
Because perhaps we can switch it. We can
that would
directly put the concept name. I don't know why we have this in the hierarchy, because I think it is because we have imported some SOSA concept. I don't know why. I don't know the reason. In fact, I have to ask.
Okay. Find out if you can get rid of that in the IRID.
Yes. Okay.
If so, I think that's a safer move, because otherwise you can't provide one namespace address.
I understand. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, it is depending on the hierarchy, and then you don't have the same prefix. Yes, for the same.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I will ask.
Okay. There. It's happening in the transform on defined underneath SS.
I think it is because we are relying on the PO2 core model, and this attribute, component, material method, and so on are core concepts. But I think we can perhaps get rid of this level. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, the point is that anything that you want to map consistently within your own ontology set of terms should have, or it's easier to have one prefix for all of it.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's okay. Like, we're not going to map SOSA sensor to something in food on.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
So that's totally fine for our purposes.
Yeah, but this is not. Food on wants to map to transform on to this code. We can't provide one transform on : and then that code if the term also has this other variant, if it's having scale code, or over on the process side.
In theory, we could also have multiple prefixes.
I know. I don't want to do that, and I think it's important not to only have one prefix for transform on.
Yes, I have to discuss with my colleague, but I think the simplest, the best. but perhaps there is some reason I am not aware of. But yes, I will ask why we have made this. And I understand that we have to have fixed no variation in the prefix name. I understand.
Right.
And perhaps what you are meaning that we can define that the term is composed of two parts, but it is much more complicated so far. To have this process slash as the concept.
I think just because term IDs aren't expected to have forward slashes in them.
Yes, that's it.
That's
okay.
all.
Okay. Fine.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the.
You bet. So in that scenario, we will be able in Foodon to also point straight to the transformon ID, and we'd be happy to. But having all our mappings to foodx2 and then having your term mappings to foodx2 would enable us to automatically create our mappings directly to you.
Yes, that's the idea. We have a common key, a key in common. I don't know.
Okay.
Fine. Thank you.
Okay. So that finishes off that agenda item. Okay, just a quick question to Kai about the PTFI. Was there some kind of presentation already about PTFI in Foodon, or was that June?
They said they had some important deadline in July. I don't remember when, and I haven't heard anything from them either. So we should see that. I have to talk to them.
Okay, good. If it's some time in the future in July, then that's fine. I've done 95% of the mapping there in those spreadsheets.
I'm sure what you've done is going to be plenty good for their purposes, and if they really need more, then it's on them to reach out to you, I think, at this point.
Okay. So back to the agenda. Okay. First of all, does anybody else have anything that they want to raise?
I'm just curious, really quick, Magdalene, with your transformon, what hierarchy are the foodx2 codes in? Because you've got material, method, process.
Oh,
You're muted.
Sorry. The foodx2 food products are included in my food branch under component. I don't know if it was your question.
Okay, yeah, because I see, is that under material? So I'm just trying to find it.
No, it is confusing to have the label material, I know, but it is historical.
You know, that's fine.
We have the product, the entity, they are the components, the PO2 components.
Okay, component at the top. Okay, gotcha. Cool. Just because like we had to have multiple prefixes, but hopefully that isn't a thing. So anyway, we can table that. We've already discussed it.
Yes, you are welcome.
Okay. Right. I had one sort of technical question about seed. So I'll just go to the issues board to see Foodon issues. Note. Okay, I didn't actually formalize this into an issue, I see. The issue is when you refer to a almond and it has its coating, its shell, is that actually the seed, the almond seed? Or is the almond itself considered the biological seed and the shell is some other biological thing, so that we can really call an almond a seed But if we want to reference a whole almond, are we talking about just the seed part, or are we talking about the shell and the seed part? And I'm ignorant about this. I was wondering if anybody happened to know. Otherwise, we have to get into a quick search on Wikipedia or wherever.
I think the almond refers to the albumen, which is the storage part, and then you have the shell, which is also another part.
Okay, so I am now seeing. I'll share this. Okay, hull, shell, and kernel. Inside. Okay, so that's, so even inside the shell is this kernel. Okay, so far I think Foodon has been talking about a whole nut being the kernel.
Yes, that's it, because you have the the nut is the kernel is inside the husk, or the
okay. So
shell.
what we're going to have to move to then for all nuts that also include the shell, which we want to have a term for, we will have this sitting next door to the kernel. So an almond would point to the kernel, but then we'll say almond with shell, and that will be a term next door to it, not under it, but next door, a sibling, and will anatomically include that both shell and kernel are part.
And the part you are eating is the inside.
Right.
It is the seed.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to create an issue for that, and then that becomes a little bit of a task if somebody wants to volunteer to go identify the nuts where we might have inaccurately mentioned that the nut is actually the internal part, whether it's macadamia or walnut or cashew or pecan or whatever. I think that needs one look over. So I'll set up an issue for that.
Yeah, like cashews, I think, for example, are not technically a seed. It's like the drupe fruit of the cashew. Right. It's something like that. Like it's like actually something else, for example. So there's some nuances here.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that has to do with the taxonomy, and so Anusha should probably know.
The point is that like we call cashews nuts, but like anatomically speaking, it's technically not. It's like there's a cashew apple that has a little thing hanging off of it, and that's not actually the seed, but that's the cashew that we call a cashew nut, even though it's not actually a seed. Like, so there's just, each nut has, like Brazil nuts are not technically nuts either. So there's a bit of work to figure out which ones are not technically nuts or seeds.
We also already have an issue open that talks exactly about how we don't describe, how we need to like address what's a true nut and not a true nut, and what do we mean by that too, that this might overlap with.
Sorry, I missed the last part of that.
Sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay. Just that we already actually have an issue thread that's open about nuts as well, that talks a bit about, well, what's a true nut, what's not a true nut, what's the difference. Talk a bit about what Kai's talking about. That might be beneficial at least to look at, if not address at the same time.
Okay, well, why don't I actually put this stuff there then, since we have to tackle it.
I'll see if I can find it and I'll drop in the chat.
Okay. Nuts and seeds.
Yeah, looks like 252.
Okay.
Going over nuts and seeds, which you started, Rhiannon.
Oh, as part of the whole milk thing.
Yes, because we have already addressed this point, but it is the point is to know if we are using the culinary names or anatomical or botanical name. Because we have already discussed about this, but we have not find an ultimate solution, I think.
Well, it's certainly okay to have multi-home classes Yeah, should make clear in the label of the class.
Damien, I don't know if you're looking at it right now, but we are only seeing your browser window.
Oh,
Plastics.
right. I was looking at a different browser window, maybe. Thanks. Okay, you know, I can see we haven't implemented this yet, but that would be a nice next thing to implement. So further note, and this will this pertains to what we're about to turn to, which is the plant template, plant times anatomy template, like the animal one. So, okay. Nut.
Yeah, exactly. We'll need to have this nut business sorted out to figure that out properly.
Then and whole, and here we're calling them what was it? True nuts. Then we'll need all true nuts to have nut. And don't know exactly how to name it, but it would look like that. So we're covering both. So we have already nut kernel as the pattern, which means nut. And that means we shouldn't have any terms that are just nut. So we would have the nut kernel and a with shell, I think, would be the pattern. And I don't think there's a technical. I don't think there's a technical thing. We just call it shell. Okay. Any other comments there?
Just from memory, when I was looking into this before, cashew and Brazil nuts are not true nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two I can think of offhand, but I'm sure there's nuttier experts than myself.
Mm-hmm. Which mean you'll never buy a cashew in the store with its shell. I guess would be other vocabulary if there was ever such a thing for sale.
Or sorry, it's the cashew is actually the seed. What we think of as the cashew nut is actually the seed of a cashew fruit. So there's a cashew apple, which kind of looks like a rose apple, but it's a totally different thing. And it has a protrusion, which is the seed, which is the cashew seed, which I don't think is the same for all nuts. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nuts are always seeds. I can't remember the definition offhand. I'm sure someone here knows.
Right. Okay, is a nut kernel a seed? Okay, so a seed technically includes the walls, which might be
Yes, the seeds is the wall part, and it is composed of different parts. The shell, the albumen, which is the part where the starch is stored.
So are we being still a little wishy?
Or the embryo, I mean the embryo. There is the embryo, the albumen, and the different parts in the seed.
I wonder if
But there are no agreement.
right.
But if we are good at botanics, we can find the right answer. But
From the Wikipedia page, almonds, pistachios, and Brazil nuts are not nuts in a botanical sense.
yes.
So that's fine. Then I guess we don't have this problem from an anatomical thing for them, but we do still have this remaining anatomical problem if we're referring to some nuts, but they're not the entire seed. They're actually conventionally the seed without the coat or I forgot what it's called in mesoderm.
I mean, I think it's so. According to the wiki, it's the fruit with a hard, tough nutshell protecting a kernel, which is usually edible.
Uh-huh.
Yes, but how don't we do as with animal? I mean, you have the meat without skin, without bone, and here we have the seed without shell, without. I don't know,
Yeah, exactly.
because
We'll have
yes,
to make
at the end we are only eating the edible part, but we can
Okay.
find it under different states. It is not. It can be, for example, a walnut can be sold at the wall.
Yeah.
Or just the inside, just the inside without the shell.
Right. So we want to be able to name the nut with the shell. And
yes,
that
with
sounds
or
easy.
without.
Right. With or without. But then there are some nuts that if we were to anatomically say we can I'm just wondering if we will run into any slight problems where here's an example. If this is the skin on the seed.
Yes, yes, it is the cell wall.
Mhm.
It is just like the bran for wheat.
So if
for example.
If a seed sometimes has that and other times doesn't, like here with this one, maybe, then we'll just have to be a little bit picky as we're going through those terms in the new plant table to offer ones with skin and ones without. Because of course it's a food process to remove the skin, so that becomes a necessary part of the description. Okay.
But I think we should not use skin. I don't know the right. My vocabulary in English is not so so fine. So there is shell, there is husk, there is hull. I don't know if it is depend on the plant, but what is the difference? It is sometimes subtle to. It is not so easy to know the difference between this kind of shell, hull, husk, and so on, and skin.
Looks like we might have to just do this as a case-by-case basis as we get to this. Okay. All right, well, it's 9:59, so that I think wraps it this week. If folks have something they pressing to put on the agenda, 2 weeks from now is actually 14. 6 plus 14 is 20. I'm actually going to be in Sherbrooke, so I'm not sure I can host a meeting. If I can't, I'll send out a notice that it's canceled unless one of you folks wants to host on an issue.
Yeah, just let us know, Damien, and if not, we can do something else or not.
Okay. Okay, I don't review my participation as necessary, especially in this age of recordings and so on. So I'm happy if somebody else wants to take over. All right, I will stop recording.